Why is eating food in video games such an important mechanic? Food is a pretty big deal, and not just because we need it to stay alive. Food carries a lot of meaning for people. Whether it's the expression of culture or turning meals into memories at the dinner table, eating affects our emotional lives. I mean, it's called comfort food for a reason, right? So this got us at Game Show thinking, why don't we ever talk about food in games? Especially because food gave gaming some of its most beloved classics. Just look at Pac-Man's compulsive eating, or Beer Tapper's gamification of hectic bar service, and fast foods, well, fast food. But while other mediums target our emotional response to delicious, delicious food, with cooking shows and movies like Ratatouille or Top Chef, games see food in a fundamentally different way. In most games, food is essentially a health potion, more of a resource than a comfort. Mostly games call back to a hunter-gatherer or survivalist mentality. Designers turn us into virtual squirrels, encouraging us to hoard all of our resources. Or was I the only one who stockpiled all the cabbage soup in Skyrim until I couldn't move anymore? Even in games exclusively about food, like Cooking Mama or Cook Serve Delicious, you barely explore the emotional side of eating. Your character never even gets to consume any of the food you spend the entire game preparing. And have you seen how video game protagonists eat? It's like the process of osmosis with munching noises thrown in. Chew, people, you gotta chew. Understandably then, game designers use food in more mechanical ways. Food systems even help game makers control the tempo of gameplay. Like in Moon Hunters, players have to eat the right kind of meal at the right time to have a successful hunt. And in Rust or DayZ, the necessity of food makes for more dynamic play. Instead of just murdering everything all the time, food forces your brain to engage in a different kind of survival tactic. So you split your time between scavenging for supplies and hunting other players. 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And though food in games tends to be much more mechanical, cultural values are still very much a part of their representation. Take GTA San Andreas, for example, which came out right around the time obesity started becoming a more public problem in America. Instead of using food as a health potion, like in Vice City, San Andreas made eating a system of consequences. If you ate poorly, CJ got fat. If you wanted CJ to be buff, you'd have to work off those Cluck and Bell calories in the gym. Even Cooking Mama uses certain cultural cues. Mama embodies the ideal traditional Japanese housewife. Her passion for cooking isn't about her love for food. It's about giving your family love through extravagant meals, at the expense of Mama's dreams of becoming a pediatrician, but I digress. But speaking of hearty, love-filled food, who could ever forget Grandma's elixir soup from Wind Waker? After rescuing Nana from an illness, she'll brew you up a soup that's stronger than any potion in the game. When you're dying in a dungeon, the soup brings the player back to happier times from the beginning of the game. Grandma's food gives you courage, even in the darkest of moments. So even when food is a health potion in a game, it can carry a cultural and emotional layer that you just won't find in any magical tonic. But food in games can also serve another valuable purpose for game designers. It can make foreign virtual worlds feel more like home. In open world games, food adds a flavor of realism and tangibility to the virtual space. Just imagine how desolate Skyrim would have felt without sweet rolls and mead.
Free sweet roll!
And I mean, just look at this photorealistic cheeseburger from Battlefield Hardline. Doesn't it make you just want to grab through your screen and eat it? Game designers are learning how to use our emotional relationship to food to make their worlds feel more like real life. When we talked to experiential food artist Emily Baltz, she said that this trend dates way back before games though.
I didn't realize you had such an interest in food.
Throughout the history of visual culture, food has been used to bring viewers closer to the artwork because our inherent sensorial reaction to seeing something mouthwatering is to reach out and grab it. We love food, and game designers aren't afraid to use that love to their benefit. Think of all the Mario Party minigames that use food as a main theme. Imagine how much less effective those games would be if you replaced the food with shoes, or coal, for example. Why do you think GLaDOS knows she can only get you to do what she wants with the promise of cake?
Enrichment Center regulations require both hands to be empty before any cake.
Food is a natural motivator. It psychologically engages us in ways that nothing else can. In fact, some players feel such an emotional connection to their food in games that they actually recreate it in real life. The gourmet gaming blog turns video game food into a kind of tourism. By bringing virtual meals into the real world, fans are able to physically experience their favorite game worlds through their taste buds. Like exploring a culture through its traditional cuisine, virtual food captures the essence of a game world. GTA's Heartstopper burger embodies Rockstar's pointed satirization of American culture, clogging up our virtual arteries one meaty bite at a time. The food in Harvest Moon is depicted as practical and functional, like it would appear to any farmer. In Broken Age, Vela's cupcake-crazy hometown, Sugar Bunting, hints at the unhealthy mentality hiding underneath the village's too-sweet exterior. And of course, there's Soda Drinker Pro, a game as weirdly addicting as Coca-Cola.
This is just gorgeous. It's like I'm on the beach right now.
Just like food in real life, food in games is about much more than just sustenance. We can approach it with the same kind of cultural and emotional baggage we bring to real life meals, even when game designers view it as little more than a health potion. So what do you think? What's your favorite food memory in a video game, and how can game designers use food in more ways to increase immersion? Hash it out in the comments, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. I'll see you all next week. Last week we talked about whether or not changing your avatar's race can affect your in-game behavior. Let's see what you had to say. MagusSartori asks a really important and logical question, which is that if changing your avatar's race in a game has some effects on your behavior, then do violent video games have some sort of effect on your behavior as well? That's the argument that's kind of been levied against games for the past few decades. Here's the big difference. What I'm not saying, I think one of the things that's confusing for people is that I think this idea that violent video games sort of create violent behavior in people who are not violent. I think that's really problematic. However, if you're naturally a very violent person and you're playing a lot of violent video games, then yeah, I could see there being a feedback loop sort of effect. The difference with like racism and sexism is that those are behaviors that a lot of us sort of already have. And I think the example from GTA that I use, where playing as a different race actually reinforced stereotypes that you already had, I think that that's the key distinction. Also, you know, for the purpose of this episode, we talked more about what happens to you in terms of your interactions with other players in terms inside of this virtual environment. So I think that's a big thing to understand, that like racism and sexism, those are things that a lot of us engage with or do or perform on a regular basis, whether it's conscious or unconscious. Violence, acting violently against other people, that's much more rare. Toma-Tora asks why Americans are so obsessed with race, arguing that people in other parts of the world don't talk about race as much. Well, I sort of disagree with you, but on that question about why Americans are obsessed with race, it's a very complicated question. But a simple answer is that it's a big part of our history, is that, that America, it's a pretty young country, and a lot of the things that were built here, the early economies were fueled by slave labor. In the West, there was immigrant labor from the Chinese that was used, and so America's always been this mixing plant. So I'm proud to be an American in the sense that I feel like Americans are very upfront in terms of talking about race, not always in a positive way, but the fact that we're talking about it at all. It's worth noting though that the American condition and its relationship to race is not one that was created by America alone. It was a result of a globalized economy that created triangular trade in which people were traded for sugar and other goods all around the world. So what happened here in America is just a consequence of what was happening in other parts of the world. That said, other parts of the world have issues with race as well. They don't always talk about it in race, sometimes it's class, but Brazil, for example, has this wide racial caste system. Northern Europe having issues in terms of integrating immigrants from other parts of the world. France dealing with the Muslim population, and lots of other parts of the world. So it may not always be called race, but it's certainly what people look like is incredibly important. Devin Wakesfield said that the experiment that the creators of Rust had engaged upon, remember, Rust has decided to make your race completely random. It's tied to your Steam ID. Whatever you get is kind of what you get, and that's permanent. But Devin likens the experiment from the creators of Rust to one that was done by a school teacher in a documentary called A Class Divided, where this school teacher actually divided the class based on their eye color, just to give them a sense of what it's like to be born into a different racial system. It was on PBS. We'll link to it in the description. You should check it out. Since we're talking about playing as a different race, PlasmaMongoose wanted to know if there was any research about playing as a different gender or different sex in video games. Funny you should ask that. We did a whole episode about it, which I will link to in the description, but the TLDR version is that male players often play as female players, sometimes to take advantage of what people might think. They may think that female avatars are easier to work with or are less competitive, and vice versa. And sometimes female players will play as male players so that people will quote unquote take them more seriously. So you should check out the whole episode. We'll link to it in the description.